Vadim Krasnokov, Media Center Ukraine. Good inform. We start the briefing devoted to the situation with cultural heritage. Many interesting and important topics today. International aid in sphere of sustaining the cultural heritage, the events and reaction of an emergency situation, providing first aid, to documenting damages and keeping the cultural heritages in wartime, and renewal after the war. I give the floor to our first speaker, Alexander Tkachenko, Minister of Culture and Informational Policy of Ukraine. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Indubitably today, in the day when the center of Venice was bombed and innocents were killed, it's difficult to move to, containing the cultural heritage when living people are dying. But because war is not only for lives of people in our territory, but it's for our identity that is represented by cultural heritage, we have to speak about it. And I'm happy that recently we have guests in Ukraine to see with their own eyes what's happening with the ruining and the damages of cultural heritage in Ukraine. Representatives of international memorials, ICOMOS, International Center of Keeping and Restoring, and Exitron and Ali Foundation, that organizations that are concerned with maintaining the cultural heritage in the world and in Ukraine. One of the key targets of the meeting is allowing the instrument capacities necessary to react on challenges of wartime strategy, elaborating strategy of renewing the cultural heritage. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, colleagues were visiting Kiev and Chernihiv regions, and they could, with their own eyes, see what are the consequences of Russian aggression in Ukraine. They will help us nations of containing the cultural heritage, and they will help us document the damages, because a lot of things, the damages there fall into war crimes category. Keeping and restoring the objects, financial and other aid. International experience from standpoint not only on the retention of cultural heritage of Ukraine, but use of expertise of international experts, digitalizations of this sphere, and creating joint projects is important, and we need this here now. There were certain steps defined for cooperation, which were agreed upon. That's experts and topics of trainings that will be conducted for our specialists, development of networks for professionals, financial aid of projects, help with documenting the damages, etc. I'm very thankful to our colleagues for being here. I think I'm more interested into listening what they have to say than what I have to say. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. Teresa Patricia, President of International Council of Preserving Memorials and Monuments and Sites.
I put the PowerPoint. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for the invitation of being here today with you and to spend this week. For ICOMOS, it was a very special experience and very important for the ongoing of our collaboration. Allow me perhaps first of all to tell perhaps for all a few words about ICOMOS. ICOMOS is International Committee of Monuments and Sites. We are an international organization worldwide. We are a non-governmental organization. We are an organization that are much more concerned with developing theories and best practice for the different situations in the world. We work for the development of theories, of doctrines, distribution of ideas, of course, with like very much to conduct and develop advocacy. And one of our main ideas and main goals is to preserve, we want all to preserve the things that are important for people and for communities. We have the responsible for preserving these things. We, as I told you, we are a worldwide organization. We have 11,000 members in 131 different countries in the world, and our members have different backgrounds. In Ukraine, of course, we have also members, experts of heritage. Nowadays, we have 98 active members in Ukraine, so we are, ICOMOS is here also to work and to collaborate and to exchange efforts with our colleagues here in the country. So our main values and our role is, of course, to protect and to preserve. We want to be all united around heritage because we consider that we are much stronger if we work all together, and normally we always use this expression that for global challenges calls for global collaboration, and I think we are facing here already a global challenge, and every country in the world needs to take attention to the situation and to what is happening in your country. So, more concerned what ICOMOS is doing related to the war in Ukraine. Well, ICOMOS, or directly the 24th of February, we launched a statement expressing our concerns with the situation. We did, during this last month, different types of message, and we had a very important meeting in Poland a few weeks ago with all our colleagues from the different European national committees, where we prepare a recommendation, a specific recommendation, where, if you allow me, I read, the group, Europe Group, calls on the world community to join forces and work together to save Ukrainians' cultural heritage, acknowledging that the deliberate targeting and damaging of heritage affects the spirit of humanity, its cultural diversity, and its diverse communities. So we also, of course, did more precise actions. We, with our different national committees, and I only can tell a few of them, so sorry if I forgot others, but like the National Committee of Canada, National Committee of Spain, Poland, Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, and it's only to tell a few of them, and help as much as they can our colleagues with materials, with fundings, with trainings, with conferences. We have also, and this is because it's something really very recent, ICOMOS with the Foundation to Preserve Ukraine's Sacred Arts and the World Monuments Fund. We delivered a few days ago 400 extinguishers, specific ones for the protection of the wooden churches, and we hope that we can help colleagues from at least perhaps around 200 wooden churches to be protected against fire. We also prepared all a series of documents for specific concerns, and these documents is listings of recommendations, how to act, how to protect in case of attack, and all these documents have been translated in Ukrainian and are being distributed through our national committee here in Ukraine. Of course, more concerning with our specific mission of this week, ICOMOS wanted to come here, and we came together with ICROM and also with Alif Foundation, and our intention it was to see the situation, to comprehend the needs and the urgent needs of the country, of the communities, and of the experts, and of course also to propose some ideas for technical assistance. We had very interesting and I think very rich discussions, and for this I really thank you very much, Mr. Minister and Deputy Minister, for listening us and for sharing and to exchange ideas. So we discussed more in depth the systematic international framework for first aid interventions and recovery planning. We discussed also the possibility of training on active rapid coordination and response mechanisms for cultural heritage in situations of crisis. So I think we had very positive results. I really, before finishing and giving the floor to my colleague from ICOMOS, the expert on crisis situations that will deliver more details, I really wanted to ensure you that ICOMOS as a whole, as a worldwide organization, we are committed to help you, and we are at your disposal, and we are ready to start working today with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Teresa Patricio, to your organization for all the efforts to help saving Ukrainian culture. Next speaker, Zainab Gül Unal, віце-президентка міжнародного
Vice President of International Council of Preserving Memorials and Sites.
Dear friends, good afternoon to everyone. And before going into details of the activities of the ICOMOS Crisis Monitoring and Response Task Force for Ukraine, I want to very brief talk about the last couple of days of our mission. As an emotionally throughout times to see the destruction of the places, heritage, and affected community, but at the same time, we saw the brave, inspiring effort of the protecting cultural heritage from ministerial level to every single Ukrainian citizens. Our colleagues, as an owner of the heritage community, for protecting their identity. Our task force is activated from very beginning of the crisis for monitoring the situation of heritage via various sources. Most of them, of course, the open sources for everyone. Also, we had a great help after a couple of days from our colleagues in the field. Then they provide us information. We call this action point of this 0 second. For to be ready at the 0 second, give us a chance to organize our expertise, especially have an experience to protecting cultural heritage in emergency. As you can see, we also cultural heritage incidence forms. As you can imagine that we need to know that while we are preparing ourselves for international support, we need to know the size of the damage to the heritage and the users. That are the forms that we created for each standalone building for Ukrainian heritage. And while we are enduring the crisis situation, we try to collect the information for strategical level, operational level and tactical level for emergency response, post-war recovery, and of course the homecoming period. And what we are planning to do with our colleagues from ICROM, long friends, monitoring and fast documentation, assessment, many various of assessment, like damage assessment, risk and need assessment, and how to manage the debris, especially the cultural debris, and emergency intervention, mapping of the risk, mapping of the needs, and how we can coordinate ourselves in the mine clearance in heritage areas, and of course conservation and restoration. And this is 3 different places. One is for safety zones, one is for front line, one is for the occupied lines, of course, need to be different. And For us, the next step, working in the hierarchy zones, methods of cultural heritage experts, and we are planning to update them according to the international standards in order to effectively protect all forms of heritage, especially in the new generation of the crisis, war situation, and disaster situation, because we know that even war cannot stop in other disaster like climate change effect. We need to be ready for disaster situation. And at the end of my words, I would like to credit to all Ukrainian colleagues. Yesterday, Deputy Minister were with us, and we had a chance to visit and work together. Dear Ihor, our long life friends, and for ICOMOS Ukrainian friends, for making this mission happen. And very soon we will be back for starting our field work. Thank you very much.
Дякуємо.
Thank you very much, Zeynep. You're now with us, and I give the floor to the next speaker, Aparna Tandon, leading head of the program of providing first aid to cultural heritage in time of crisis of National Center of Research of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Values, of cultural property.
Honorable Culture Minister, the Deputy Minister, and esteemed colleagues, members of the press, thank you so much for inviting us this joint mission of ICROM and ICOMOS here and making it possible. We've had I would say, a very transformative experience in these past few days since we have been here. And before I talk about the findings of our mission and also about the next steps, I would like to give a small introduction of ICROM, the organization, the International Center for the Study of Preservation of Cultural Property, which is based in Rome. It's an intergovernmental organization with 137 member states, and Ukraine happens to be one of the member states of ICROM. ICROM was founded after the Second World War, when there was much destruction around the world, and it was felt that a specialized body is needed to gather good practices from all around the world and recover damaged cultural heritage and establish peace and order. Since then, we've had a long journey with our member states, and we are dedicated to building capacities for conservation of cultural heritage, of all forms of cultural heritage, and leveraging this work to promote sustainable development, peace, and resilience. And our work lately has become even more crucial because the world is facing increased frequency of disasters due to climate change, and we are also witnessing a new generation of conflicts all around the world. And unfortunately, we are also facing this situation in this part of the world. So ICROM has a flagship capacity development program, First Aid and Resilience for Cultural Heritage in Times of Crisis. Through this program, which is part of its strategic direction on focusing on world concern, we offer training worldwide for protecting cultural heritage, and we do this in multiple ways by providing information exchange as well as capacity development for prevention, reducing risks, for responding, like such as this kind of a situation, recovery, advising governments on how to plan recovery, and as well as building resilience by implementing or helping our member states to design people-centered recovery programs, and which are very much, which involve or engage local communities or affected communities. One of the big part of our work is also training and offering training before, during, and after disaster or a conflict. And we do it in a very regular way. And so far, we have created a network, very robust network of 1,000+ cultural first aiders in over 115 countries. And we offer national courses as well as international courses. And I'm very happy to say that Mr. Ihor Poshivalo, who's one of the founders of the HERI initiative here in Ukraine, is also one of our cultural first aiders, and we are grateful to him for, along with the ministry, for coordinating this mission. We also, as an organization, we believe that culture is at the core of a community's well-being, and it has to be integrated with, its protection has to be integrated with humanitarian aid, and that's why all around the world, and especially within the European Union, we are embedding this work within the civil protection responses, and they are right now engaged with a few member states from European Union in standardizing this work and codifying practices, and some of this work will be also has been used elsewhere in the world. Also, we are helping to train European Union and UN coordination experts who visit countries post-disasters or post-conflicts, and are also helping to develop operational guidelines so that we can work closely with military, with civil protection, with Red Cross, and ensure that the work of cultural heritage recovery is embedded in the humanitarian practice. Peace building is also one of the cornerstone of ICROM's work, and we are developing tools as well as guidelines, working with governments closely as well as affected communities in developing peace programs following a conflict, and which are very important in promoting early recovery, as also ensuring that there is lasting peace and resilience after a violent conflict situation. And last but not the least, we offer in-crisis assistance to ICROM's member states and develop response and recovery strategies. We have done this work in many places all around the world, and we are also providing training for, as my colleagues have already outlined, for damage risk assessment, emergency stabilization of heritage structures, as well as other forms of heritage recovery, rehabilitation, and peace building. Since the war broke out in Ukraine, we have been working closely with the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, as well as our international partners such as UNESCO, ICOMOS, and ELIF Foundation, to translate some of our very well-known handbooks and toolkits. And Ihor, of course, has been central to this effort. And at the moment, we are developing an app which we have already invested in, and the app is up and ready. Yesterday, it was field tested together with the Deputy Minister and a team, the ICROM-ICOMOS team, and there is also a dedicated server with this app. Now, what will this app do? It will help to define priorities for immediate action. It will help to assess the damage and loss in terms of lives, livelihoods, and infrastructure, especially within the cultural heritage sector. Help estimate costs for recovery in a post-conflict period for cultural heritage, and facilitate risk-informed decision-making, thus enabling an efficient use of resources. And as my colleague Zeynep Gul Onal just said, this is just the beginning of our work. We hope to conduct training and in field and also other kind of field projects which are very much will be in line with what the ministry indicates to us, and we hope to develop much closer cooperation. And on behalf of ICROM, its Director General, and its council, which is its highest governing body, I would like to assure you that we are ready to offer assistance, but only the way Ukraine would like to receive this assistance. And we would like to be back very soon, working in tandem with the colleagues here and with the government, as well as the affected communities. And we hope that peace will be soon restored. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'd like to end. I know the Mr. Minister said that today we had an unfortunate incident and there was loss of life. But when we mourn, we also mourn with our culture, and culture is really also helps us to come together and to mourn as well as to recover, and it's a source of resilience. So our motto is culture cannot wait. Thank you so much.
That's absolutely true. Thank you so much for being with us today. Aparna Tandon, будь ласка.
Please. Please I give floor to Katerina Chueva, Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy. Good day, dear guests, esteemed guests, Mr. Minister. Thank you for this opportunity to meet. First of all, what I wanted to say is that regretfully, in times when daily people are killed in different regions of Ukraine, for what reason? Because neighboring country started the attack on our land and our culture. It looks that, cultural heritage can, maybe it can wait, but we have to remember that each Ukrainian, each person in the world is a carrier of a certain culture. And speaking of cultural heritage, we're not speaking of the material implementation objects and buildings or museums, but museum objects, but about carriers of traditions and culture. With each person that becomes an innocent victim of this war will lose part of world culture, will lose the knowledge that they have, the traditions that those people kept. Therefore, our work is related to work for the people that work with cultural heritage and to material carriers that embody the knowledge and memory of people. I'm very thankful to the international community, particularly the organizations whose representatives are here today with us, ICOMOS, ICROM, and also other organizations that during the whole time, starting not from February this year, but earlier, in particular since 2014, during all the time they supported Ukraine in a different way. Joint programs, meetings, conferences with civil society, financing joint projects. There are many programs. However, regretfully, prior full-scale invasion, you cannot be prepared to the war, to the full. As much as we plan, war corrects it all. And regretfully, we will be forced to, as it happens today, to rebuild our airplane while we're flying. We have to build high-quality new system reacting to emergencies to sustain the cultural heritage. We all are aware that, regretfully, it's impossible, sometimes physically, to protect big constructions, or it's sometimes impossible to protect people. But to do everything possible to decrease the risks, to timely and correctly document the damages, that's our job today. And all international partners support us in that. I would also like to mark and thank separately those organizations, Ukrainian organizations, institutions, the state sector, and institutions of civil society who made this work possible. Because during many years, as you possibly noticed, activists, civil activists, institutes of civil society, they helped preserve cultural heritage. It was presented many things. It was cooperation with museums, humanitarian dossier for UNESCO, speaking of non-material cultural heritage. And during those months of war, state institutions and civil institutions included in joint operations. And without those joint efforts, it would be impossible to reach the results. It would be impossible to develop this work efficiently. Therefore, on behalf of the Ministry of Culture, I would like to thank them all for joining in different regions of Ukraine, being abroad. Each of them work to make our victory as soon as possible and decrease our damages during the war. We'll speak many times, and particularly here in this room, about the programs of saving cultural heritage that we elaborate now with our colleagues, with ICROM, ECOMOS, and other international organizations, because each such project is a cause to communicate and talk about cultural heritage. We work together, that Ukrainian specialists that made a decision to stay in Ukraine during this uneasy and dangerous period have more opportunities, have more resource, and more tools to fulfill their job, fulfill their tasks. And once again, we thank all those who help us, who help bring a victory closer and save cultural heritage during the wartime. Thank you all, and we're ready to answer the questions. Thank you. Thank you, Controller Chueva. And I give the floor to Igor Poshevailo, General Director of National Memorial Complex of Heroes of Heaven 100, Museum of Revolution and Dignity, co-coordinator of staff of Saving the Heritage. Good day. Glory to Ukraine. We today are present here and are discussing a very positive moment, a moment when international organizations and national organizations, NGOs and government organizations, they joint efforts to win. Russia, and we've been talking a lot about it, they try to destroy, and they fight not only on the military front. We have a informational front, we speak about informational front, we speak about cultural front. And actually, there are many factors here. It's not just words or excuses. Those are our realia. Leaders of culture sphere of Russian Federation, they openly say that any means, cultural means, or museum exposures, there are special operations against Ukraine, against our cultural identity, against our historical memory, and against our civilians and our independent future. That is why it's very important for us to speak of this fruitful cooperation about joint efforts. Ukraine called in the first days of weeks of full-scale invasion, Ukraine, and prior to that, for 8 years, called on the world to joint efforts to save Ukraine and the world, save the world, the democratic values. Regretfully, the world back then did not hear us, to understand the situation, did not understand the wide context, the historical context, cultural context. And the problems that we have today, they're related firstly with that we were not heard by the world. And that's why it's really important, the reaction for the world to hear us, the cultural community of Ukraine joint efforts vertically and horizontally with government institutions, with international institutions. I will speak of one of the examples. Staff of Saving Cultural Heritage is just a tool of Ministry of Culture and a tool, in fact, of joint efforts of NGOs and an attempt to answer the first questions that we heard in the first hours of war. How we can help Ukraine was the question from our colleagues who were from other countries and international institutions. That's why, in particular, we created a series of initiatives that had a task of saving cultural heritage, helping cultural heritage, different levels, regional, national, and that have their own specifics. And for us, it's very important to join efforts like this. And we wanted to solve one of the most topical threats of full-scale invasion, its absence of coordination. It was on different levels, on political level, on military level, on cultural level. And as a result, currently, very simple figures, but they speak for themselves. Our initiative with wider aid, with other initiatives, with the help of Ministry of Culture and international institutions, organizations, 74 museums, libraries, archives, they received aid, tangible aid. 170 institutions received consultancy and organization assistance aid. It's also very important aid that our colleagues acquired also on the occupied territories. Some working moments, not about strategic, about negotiations on its promises we have today. Just mundane things. It's unloading of trains and cars and vehicles, storage account, registering. We see solidarity with Ukraine, very emotional confirmation that the world is with us. We find, without just PR, in those containers we find labels, in photo containers with packing materials. We found, for Museum of Ukraine, we found words written on a cardboard. Lulu team is with you, Ukraine. All those small things are very important. There are also weapons that make this happen, that make us stronger. We also made a digital hub, a pro museum, where we gather the needs from the fields, and we can see what the world can offer us, from packing materials, from protective gear, equipment, from services, and a lot of online sessions, discussions, solving issues, trainings, seminars. Our initiative, with the help of partners, they monitor status of cultural heritage, and we have interactive map. Right now it's closed for security reasons, but we cooperate with our colleagues in the Smithsonian initiative of monitoring with a satellite, 26,000 of object of cultural heritage in Ukraine. And that monitoring is important not only to define priorities of reacting, but also to gather evidence, not only document losses, but to document crimes of Russian Federation against cultural heritage of Ukraine. And actually, we had very intense days. For us, our guests, was the first time because we could actually go to the fields and visit the objects ruined of cultural heritage. We spoke with colleagues who were caring for those objects with the communities for whom that heritage is a part of their life. And there's a trend in the world that there is no division between humanitarian aid and cultural aid, because cultural heritage, culture, is a very important component of well-being of people. So helping people, we have to speak not only of physical help, but speaking of their cultural identity. Here we can see that actively we document, and our foreign partners help us. Our colleagues help us that bring specific equipment that we really like in Ukraine. Photogrammetry, that's scanning and 3D modeling. We see Russian experts, Manuel Durand, that there also there Mr. Bruno and other representatives. There are many proposals today for the world to help us document objects of cultural heritage, to preserve them and renew them if they're damaged. And for those documents, in fact, to be part of criminal cases against the Russian Federation and receiving money to rebuild and renew our ruined objects. And naturally, one of the important missions of this mission of Ukraine was a very practical part that Parnas was speaking about. We are adapting the existing international methods for Ukrainian realia. Our experience is unique, and I think with time the world will analyze our situation, and we will be experts. We will advise others, other countries, in other contexts, how to better conduct certain processes. We have 4 forums that help us document and evaluate losses and risks and prepare for renewal in mobile and mobile and archaeological memorials and cultural heritage. And that's how processes are conducted. It's very important for us to conduct those trips and document that we create a network of our partners, of colleagues who could work in the regions, and regions that were occupied is really important, because prior to that, the situation in occupied regions, it's unknown. It's a great challenge because it's difficult for us to understand what's happening with the cultural heritage with our colleagues until those regions are deoccupied. And here, very important methods are methods of satellite monitoring. Therefore, we have a lot of work, and it's important for us to join our human, material, and technical efforts. It's very pleasant that the world is ready to come to Ukraine, not just to look and come home and report, but for us to jointly together, rolling up the sleeves, do something very important, very needed, to preserve what we have and to rebuild what was destroyed. For the cultural heritage as a weapon in this war, as important as a part of our identity, to be powerful, for us to leave the next generations the treasures that our ancestors were preserving for centuries. Thank you. Thank you, Igor Poshevalo. We have questions from the room. Yes, please. Good day, Moderator, Espresso TV channel. I have a question to Mr. Minister Alexander Tkachenko. Our cultural heritage comprises of museums of Ukraine, and many of museums are now in the occupied territories. I have a few questions regarding museums. Are those museums, state museums, financed 100% by state expense, or do we have underfinancing? And what is the situation right now with museums that are on the occupied territories? On the front line, on the contact line. Is the evacuation plan moving the exponents of museums? And do they continue their international activity? Do they apply for grants? And does the ministry help with forming those documents? Registering those documents. Could you repeat the last part about grants? Do those museums continue international activity? Do they apply for grants? And do you help with the applications? All museums are financed. All museums that are in the field of management of KIP, they're financed by 100%. There was certain sequesters of budget in the beginning of the year, so according to those sequesters, they are financed. There are nuances related to finance of municipal museums. There were some more shortages, but that's delayed related to territory related. We're communicating to, firstly, museum preserves are financed to the full because that's preserving our heritage. Yes, evacuation is ongoing. From where to where I will not tell you, for obvious reasons. And museums that are on partially occupied, on temporary occupied territory, and the culture institutions, when it's possible, they are financed. Yes, not to the full, but they are financed. Related to the grant, yes, that work is activated to receiving grants and informational comparison, and with our colleagues. Museums are cooperating directly, and we agreed with UNESCO, RSCROM, and ICOMOS that we'll make lists to coordinate that aid. We're to make clear where is a priority and where it's important to start some works on protection and where to restore. More questions, please. So in connection with Inform, I also have a question to Mr. Minister. What countries are already helping or agreed to help us with restoring the cultural heritage, and what help, except for financial help, it's about? Well, practically the majority of European countries, it's easier to say who did not, but the majority do help to a certain extent, bigger or lesser extent. They help to the institutions, to the cultural institutions, to the artists, to the not only cultural heritage, but also to the sector. There is help for books. So it's ongoing. The question that we raise now is coordination of that aid. It's coordination of that effort, because from the start, for obvious reasons, it was naturally, it was a direct, chaotic manner. Now we try to coordinate that help, and we say that in a meeting with the colleagues, that with my colleague ministers and from other civilized world, that if necessary we have to create the foundation to help Ukrainian culture. Ukrainian culture can't wait, so we can get grants not only from for urgent needs, but for after the war. The scope of that aid has to be 5 to 6 billion euro, and 10% of what is needed now. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Alexander Tkachenko, Minister of Culture, Information Policy of Ukraine. Grant Shueva, Deputy Minister of Culture, Information Policy of Ukraine. Igor Prishevalo, General Director of National Memorial Complex of Heroes of Heavenly 100, Museum of Heroes and Dignity. Teresa Patricia, President of International Council of Preserving Monuments and Historical Sites. Parantanon, a specialist of program providing first aid to cultural heritage at times of crisis. International Center of Preserve and Restoring the Cultural Sites. Zeynep Kudlanel, Vice President of International Council of Preserving Memorials and Historical Sites. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. It's Media Central, Ukraine Forum. I'm Vadim Krasnouki. See you tomorrow.